Hey guys, John here, and it's time for another installment of Thoughts on Walks. Now, today's Thoughts on Walks is going to be a little bit different than normal. You see, normally I'm talking about a specific news item, but I get a lot of emails from people quite often, and I have for years, about getting started in writing a screenplay or getting started in starting a podcast or a blog or a YouTube channel. And I think there's a principle here that applies to all that stuff, but also just about everything else worth doing in life. And that is, the thing that stops most people from pursuing their goals or pursuing their dreams is taking a risk. And the reason they don't want to take a risk is because they have a fear of failure. So today, that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. We're going to talk about needing to take a risk to accomplish anything that you want to accomplish in life. Number 2, dealing with the fear of failure. And then number 3, dealing with failure itself when it does happen. Now, to start with this, I'm going to do something a little bit different, a little bit strange. Follow with me here. I need to start this by telling a Bible story. Okay? Are you with me? All right, follow along with me here, because this becomes important a little bit later on. As the story goes, and this is my favorite story in all of the Bible, as the story goes, there was this one time that Jesus decided to take all of his apostles out on a boat. And in the middle of the night, all the apostles woke up. While they were sleeping, I don't know. But all the apostles woke up because there was a big storm. And the Bible says it was terrifying. The thunder was cracking and the waves were washing over the side of the boat, and it was all really scary. And as the apostles look around, they realize that Jesus isn't there. What they do is they look out on the water, though, in the middle of the night, and as the lightning would strike, they would see out on the water, Jesus was standing out on the water, and he told them to come and walk towards him. Now, the Bible describes, as the story goes, that all the apostles were terrified and huddled in the boat. But one guy, Peter, he decides to get up and get out of the boat. Now, this is where that story, Doubting Peter, comes from. So as the story goes, Peter gets out of the boat. He takes a couple of steps on the water, walking towards Jesus. But what happens, as the story goes, is that he started to see how bad the storm was. He got scared, and after a couple of steps, he started to sink. So as that Bible story was always told in churches and Sunday schools, it was often told from a point of view that made Peter out to be the bum. That they called him, he lacked the faith, and so he sunk on water. But there's something very important about that story, and this is how it all ties into risk and fear of failure, is that before he started to sink, according to the story, Peter actually walked on water for a couple of steps. Yeah, at the end of the day, Peter looked silly. He got soaked, he got wet, he stepped out of the boat. After a couple of steps, he sunk, and everybody saw his failure, and everybody made fun of him. But I want us to keep one thing in mind, that while 11 other cowards sat comfortable and safely in a boat, one of them, even though he sunk, actually walked on water. The theme here that we're going to come back to over and over is this: if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. Okay, so with all that set up, let's talk about needing to take risks. I get people all the time telling me they want to start a podcast, or they want to write a blog, or they want to write a screenplay, or they want to pursue a career in law, or they want to pursue a career in acting, or they want to take some kind of thing to advance their goals and advance their life. But quite often, they're afraid of doing it because they know it involves taking a risk. Listen, the thing about life, and this is true specifically also about podcasts or blogs or YouTube channels, whatever, is that at some point you got to nut up and take a risk. Whenever there's an opportunity to achieve something, that also means there's an opportunity for you to fail at something. There is the potential for failure. But without going out and taking a risk, without going out and making an attempt, without going out and putting yourself out there to try, you're never going to accomplish anything. If you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. Now, let's be clear here. I'm not saying take stupid risks or needless risks. Like for me, I'm not going to run off to New York City to try to become a male supermodel. That's just not likely at this point. That's why what I'm always telling people is take calculated risks. Make sure you evaluate, do I have some sort of reasonable chance for success at a particular risk? If there's no chance for success, then that's not a calculated risk. And if you don't think you have good odds, then are there things you can do to try to improve your odds? Are there things you can do to put yourself in a better situation, to put yourself at a greater chance of success? And if that's the case, then spend a few weeks or months or years doing the things to put yourself in a better chance for success. These are all things I refer to as taking calculated risks. So yeah, you got to take risks, but don't be stupid about it. take calculated risks. So now let's talk about the part that usually slams the brakes on people, the fear of failing. John, what if I try this? What if I try this and I spend a whole bunch of money on this education and it doesn't work out? John, what if I try doing stand-up comedy and I'm no good at it and I make myself look silly and I make myself look dumb, and instead of making people laugh, kind of like the Joker, I just make people laugh at me? What if that happens? Well, yeah, there is a risk of failure. That's why it's called risk. But there's two things I want you to keep in mind about failure and how to deal with the fear of failure. The first thing is this: you've got to accept that failure is going to happen. It's just that simple. Look, I'd like to be able to tell you that if you do everything right, if you take the right calculated risks, if you do all the proper things to give yourself the best chances of success, then 9 times out of 10, it's going to work out. The reality, that's not true. You're going to fail, and you have to just accept that as an inevitability. For every, 10 risks you take, 9 of them will probably turn out in failure. Leonardo DiCaprio got his first Academy Award nomination in 1994. He had to wait till 2016 before he finally won. The Toronto Raptors won the NBA title last year, but guess what? In that season, they lost 24 games. That means 24 times that they prepared and practiced and got ready and did everything they needed to do and gave their best effort, they still ended up losing. As a matter of fact, they came into the league 24 years ago. They had 23 other seasons where they tried their hardest all year and they came up short. And then eventually they succeeded. The point here is this: when you embrace the notion that failure is going to happen whenever you try risk, but that risk is absolutely necessary for achieving anything you want to achieve, then all of a sudden the fear of failure starts to dissipate a little bit. You'll always be afraid of failure a little bit, but when you embrace the fact that it's going to happen no matter what you do at some point, then it starts to become more manageable. So the first thing that you have to do in dealing with the fear of failure is understand you're going to fail, okay? Embrace that. The second thing to help you deal with the fear of failure is this: is that understand that failure helps lead you to future success. I mentioned that the Toronto Raptors, they had, 20 plus years of not achieving their goals, but all that failure helped them learn, helped them grow, and eventually they got to their goals. Leonardo DiCaprio, first got his first nomination in 94 for What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but he never got there. He got nominated a bunch of other times, never got there. But he kept working at it, kept developing, kept growing, and eventually he got there. The point is, yes, you're going to fail, but failure can be one of the stepping stones to future success. So yes, if you've got dreams or goals, no matter how big they are, you want to win an Academy Award. No matter how modest they are, you want to start a podcast and have some fun. It's going to involve taking risks. Taking a risk means you might fail. But if you understand that failure is inevitable anyway, and it's going to happen sometimes, and if you understand that those failures can lead to growing opportunities to lead you towards your success in the future, it becomes a lot more easy to deal with. Last thing I want to throw in here is this, is that I wish I could tell you that failure is not a big deal. And when you do those things of learning how to accept the fear of failure, that failure becomes easier. Failure sucks. There's no way around it. It does. I don't like failing. With all the successes I've had 3 times as many failures in my life. I think that's pretty common amongst most people. Failure is embarrassing. When you fail, especially publicly, like when you do something in front of people and you fail, it's even more embarrassing. Like everybody will take that crumpled up piece of paper and take a shot at the wastebasket when no one else is in the room. People are more hesitant to do that when there's an audience because they're afraid of looking stupid. They're afraid of being humiliated. They're afraid of taking ridicule. And that's a real thing. It's going to happen. But when that comes up and you're facing that situation, do I pursue my goals or do I not? Do I go for what I want or do I become governed by the fear I have of ridicule? Understand this. Ask yourself this question. Do you want to walk on water or do you want to stay on the boat? Because if you want to walk on water, that means you're going to have to get out in the storm. You're going to have to get into unfriendly territory. You're going to have to get into a position where you're a little bit nervous and a little bit scared. And yeah, you might fail. But here's the thing. Don't be governed by the fear of the ridicule that you might get from 11 cowards still sitting in a boat. Yeah, the cowards who just want to sit safely in a boat, they're quick to ridicule, but you cannot allow yourself to be deterred by the mockery of the cowards. So I guess that concludes today's Sunday sermon with John Campea on risk, failure, and dealing with the fear of failure. Again, guys, repeat this to yourself every day. If you want to walk on water, you get out of the boat. So do you want to be somebody that walks on water, even if it means you make a fool out of yourself sometimes? Do you want to, at the end of your day, say, I was able to do something nobody else did? Or that I was able to do something that I never could have done if I never took a risk? Or do you want to play it safe and be one of those cowards who just stayed nice and dry in the boat? It's up to you. Anyway, guys, that's my completely unprofessional opinion about, not that I'm an expert on any of this, but these are some philosophies that I live my life by and some philosophies that I use in pursuing my dreams. Hopefully they come in handy for you. Anyway, that'll do it for today's installment of Thoughts on Walks.